A 10-second close-up. A small, scarred turtle paddles in the crystal blue water of a baby pool. A child's silent, watchful eyes. A woman's manicured finger stabs the air. It's a health code violation. Cut to the woman Melinda sweating as a police officer looks not at the turtle but at a checkbook in his hand. Apex Pool Solutions, ma'am? Who is that? The heat of the late August afternoon was a physical weight, pressing down on the pristine, white-stamped concrete of the Oakwood Preserve community pool. It was adult swim time, and the main pool was empty, its surface a sheet of turquoise glass. Mark Evans sat on the edge of the circular baby pool, his bare feet submerged in the lukewarm water. Beside him, his 8-year-old son Leo was crouched, his entire focus on the small, painted turtle in his hands. "Go on, buddy," Mark whispered, his voice rough with an exhaustion that had nothing to do with the heat. "Sheldon's hot, too. Let him have a dip." Leo's brow furrowed. He hadn't spoken in 67 days. Not since the day of the accident, the day the silence had rushed in to fill the space his mother's laughter used to occupy. Sheldon, a rescue turtle with a chip in his shell, was the only thing that seemed to breach the new, silent wall around his son. Leo looked at his father, his eyes asking for permission he'd already received. Mark nodded, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Slowly, Leo lowered the turtle into the 6-inch deep water. Sheldon, delighted, kicked his small, webbed feet and made a slow-motion circuit of the shallow pool. And Leo smiled. It wasn't a full smile. It was the barest tremor at the corners of his mouth, a tiny upward hitch. But to Mark, it was the sun rising. He felt his throat tighten, a sudden, sharp sting behind his eyes. He hadn't seen that expression since. Before, he was about to tell Leo how brave Sheldon was when a shadow fell across the water. "Absolutely not." The voice was sharp, cold, and sheared straight through the fragile moment. Mark looked up. Melinda Croft, president of the Oakwood Preserve Homeowners Association, stood over them. She was immaculate in a white linen sundress, oversized sunglasses, and a wide-brimmed hat. She held a clipboard like a weapon. "I'm sorry," Mark said, shielding his eyes. "I said absolutely not." Melinda pointed a crimson-nailed finger at the baby pool. "Get that thing out of the water, now." Mark felt Leo flinch, his tiny smile vanishing. The boy's shoulders hunched as he scrambled to scoop Sheldon back out of the water, clutching the turtle to his chest. "He's just a small turtle, ma'am," Mark said, his voice level, though a familiar, tired anger was starting to simmer. He stood up, unconsciously placing himself between Melinda and his son. "It's a baby pool. No one is even in it. It doesn't matter if the entire community is baptized in it. It is a reptile," Melinda spat the word. "They carry salmonella. It is a disgusting biohazard and a direct violation of Section 14, Article 8 of the Community Bylaws. No animals in the pool enclosure. Period." "He's an emotional support animal," Mark said, the words tasting like an excuse, though they were true. "My son, he's been through a lot," the turtle calms him. Melinda's painted-on smile was devoid of all warmth. "I am very sorry for a lot, but a lot doesn't give you the right to endanger the health of every resident here. This is a $200,000 facility, not a swamp. You are renters, aren't you? The Millers' tenants." She consulted her clipboard, though she clearly already knew the answer. "Yes, I should have known. The Millers are 3 months behind on their special assessments. Now I see where their money is going." The cruelty of the remark, so casual and precise, struck Mark dumb for a second. "What does that have to do with anything?" "It has everything to do with it," Melinda said, her voice rising. "People who respect this community, who invest in this community, follow the rules. You people come in here, you pay your rent, and you think you own the place. You think the rules don't apply to you. That your problems. Give you a pass." "He's a child," Mark said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "He just wanted to see his turtle swim. We'll leave. You don't need to." "Yes, you will leave, and you will be fined," Melinda snapped. "And the cost of a full shock and sanitized treatment for this pool will be billed directly to the Miller's delinquent account. I want you out of this enclosure. Now." "Fine," Mark said, grabbing their towels. "Come on, Leo." But Leo was frozen, his eyes wide, fixed on the woman who had just called his only friend a thing. "I mean it," Melinda took a step closer. "Give me the animal. It needs to be removed." "No," the word burst from Mark, louder than he intended. "You will not touch him. You will not come near my son." Melinda's face hardened into a mask of righteous fury. "That's it. You're threatening an HOA board member. You're trespassing." "We're leaving," Mark insisted, trying to gently pull Leo by the arm. But Leo was rooted to the spot, trembling. You're not leaving, you're being removed. Melinda pulled a phone from her designer bag. I am calling the police. You're calling the police? For a turtle? Mark asked in disbelief. I'm calling the police to report an aggressive, non-compliant individual who is threatening me and creating a public health crisis. She dialed 911. Her voice changed instantly, becoming high-pitched and frantic. Yes, help. I'm at the Oakwood Preserve pool. There's a man here. He's very aggressive. He refuses to leave. He's thrown some kind of animal in the pool and he's threatening me. Please hurry. Mark stared at her, his blood running cold. She was performing and she was good at it. He knelt in front of Leo. Hey, buddy, it's okay. We're just going to go home. We'll go home and we'll build Sheldon his own pool, okay? A better one. He picked his son up, turtle and all, and began walking toward the gate. Don't you walk away from me, Melinda shrieked into the phone. He's trying to flee. He's the one in the gray shorts. Yes, hurry. Mark ignored her, his only focus on getting Leo out of there. He pushed through the heavy steel gate just as the distant, faint sound of a siren grew closer. He turned and saw Melinda standing by the pool, phone at her side, a look of profound, smug satisfaction on her face. Two police cruisers, lights flashing, pulled into the pristine brick paver parking lot. They hadn't used their sirens to enter the quiet, gated community, but the revolving red and blue lights seemed to scream in the silent, oppressive heat. Two officers, a man and a woman, got out of their cars, their expressions already heavy with the weariness of a domestic-turned-nuisance call. That's him, Melinda shouted, pointing at Mark, who stood frozen by his car, holding his silent son. That's the man who threatened me. Officer Davis, a 20-year veteran with a perpetually skeptical gaze, let his eyes travel from Melinda, who was vibrating with indignation, to Mark, who just looked exhausted. Mark's shoulders were slumped, and the small boy in his arms was hiding his face, his knuckles white as he clutched a small turtle. "Threatened you, ma'am?" Davis asked, his voice a flat, unimpressed baritone. His partner, Officer Chen, younger and sharper, moved past him, her eyes scanning the scene. Yes, I told him the rules, no animals in the pool, and he became belligerent. He shouted at me. He refused to leave. I felt endangered. Melinda fanned herself with her clipboard. He contaminated the baby pool with that thing. Chen glanced at the baby pool. With the turtle. Yes, it's a reptile. It's teeming with salmonella. We have infants who use this pool. He was completely indifferent to the danger. Davis sighed. It was the fourth call he'd had that week from an HOA president. Sir, he said, turning to Mark, what's your side of it? Mark, still trying to soothe Leo, who was shaking, explained as calmly as he could. My son, he's selectively mute. His mom passed away 2 months ago. That turtle is his emotional support animal. It's the only thing he connects with. We were the only ones here. I let him put the turtle in the baby pool for a minute. The water is 6 inches deep. It's the first time he's smiled in weeks. Davis's expression softened almost imperceptibly. He looked at the child, whose face was buried in his father's neck. And did you threaten this woman? No, Mark said, shaking his head. I raised my voice, I'll admit that. She said some pretty awful things. She tried to take the turtle. I just told her to stay away from my son. We were leaving when she called you. He's lying, Melinda interjected. He was fleeing, and he's not even a homeowner. He's a renter. Officer Chen, who had been quietly walking the perimeter of the pool, spoke up. Ma'am, do you have a copy of the bylaws you're referencing? Of course I do, Melinda said stiffly. I always have them. This community runs on its rules. If one person breaks them, it all falls apart. It's anarchy. She stalked over to a large, immaculate resin storage cabana near the pump house, which was clearly her personal command center. She unlocked it and pulled out a thick white binder. Section 14, Article 8. Read it and weep, she said, shoving the binder at Davis. Davis took it, his eyes scanning the page. While he read, Chen idly tapped the large, humming filtration system unit next to the cabana. Pump sounds rough, Chen noted, grinding noise. Melinda's head snapped toward her. Don't touch that, it's brand new. We just had the entire system replaced. A complete overhaul. It cost the community nearly $80,000. Which, she added, glaring at Mark, is another reason I can't have vagrants contaminating the water. That is a precision instrument. $80,000? Davis looked up from the binder, his brow furrowed. That's a hell of a pool pump, ma'am. It's a commercial-grade filtration, sterilization, and heating system, Melinda said proudly. Top of the line. We spare no expense here at Oakwood Preserve, unlike some people. Chen, ignoring Melinda's warning, bent down and scraped a small patch of grime off a metal plaque on the side of the unit. She read the plaque, then pulled out her phone and typed something. Mark, standing awkwardly by the gate, just wanted to leave. This whole thing was insane. "Sir, you're free to go," Davis said suddenly, handing the binder back to a surprised Melinda. "What?" Melinda shrieked. He violated the rules, he threatened me." "Ma'am, this bylaw," Davis said, tapping the binder, "says no large animals, defined as any animal over 20 pounds or any animal that creates a public nuisance. A 4-inch turtle in an empty baby pool isn't a public nuisance. It's a turtle, and I'm leaving is not a threat. You wasted city resources with this call." "Wasted?" Melinda was sputtering, her face turning a deep, blotchy red. "Ma'am," Chen interrupted, her voice suddenly sharp, all pretense of casualness gone. "You said this system cost $80,000. "Yes, that's the invoice," Melinda said, flipping to a different page on her clipboard and thrusting it at the officer. "See, Apex Pool Solutions, $80,455 paid in full." Chen looked at the invoice, then at the plaque on the pump. "That's funny, because this unit is a Poolbright 3000. According to the manufacturer's website, and my cousin who installs them for a living, the top-of-the-line model retails for about $5 grand, maybe 7 with installation." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the grind-thwack of the faulty pump. Melinda's face froze, the color drained from it. I don't handle the specifics, our vendor, Apex. They handle the procurement. It was a whole system overhaul, not just the pump." "An $80,000 system," Chen repeated, "and it sounds like it's full of gravel. Who owns Apex Pool Solutions, ma'am?" "I don't know, they're a vendor." Melinda was backing away, her eyes darting between the two officers. "Because," Davis said, taking the clipboard from her now limp hand, "I see you've attached about a dozen other invoices from them. Monthly chemical balancing, $2,500. Emergency resurfacing, $12,000. Tile grouting, $4,000. This must be the cleanest, most expensive pool in the state." Mark, who had started to walk to his car, stopped. He turned around. Leo was now watching, his eyes wide and curious. "This is harassment," Melinda tried, her voice a reedy tremor. "This has nothing to do with him." "No, ma'am, it doesn't," Officer Davis said, his voice now like ice. "It has to do with fraud. You mind opening that cabana for us again, the one you seem to be using as an office?" You don't have a warrant." "That's a community property storage unit, isn't it? Not a private residence?" Chen asked, already walking toward it. "And you're the HOA president. I'm sure you'd be happy to clear this up." "Stay out of there," Melinda shrieked, lunging for the cabana door. But Chen was quicker. She blocked Melinda with her arm. "Ma'am, I need you to step back right now." Davis looked at Mark. "You should probably stick around, sir. You're a witness to all of this." Mark nodded, his heart suddenly pounding a new, strange rhythm. The world had just tilted, and the woman who held all the power 5 minutes ago was now backed against a failing pool pump, her perfect white dress wilted, her face a mask of dawning, animalistic panic. The storage cabana was not, in fact, full of chlorine buckets and pool noodles. It was an office, a meticulous, obsessively organized office. A rolling file cabinet, a small desk, and shelves upon shelves of white 3-ring binders, each with a gold-stamped label. Landscaping, 2023. Clubhouse repairs, 2022. Special assessments, 2021. "You run the whole association out of here, don't you, Ms. Croft?" Officer Chen asked, her tone conversational as she slid open the top drawer of the file cabinet. "This is private property. You can't just—" Melinda's voice was cracking. The afternoon heat inside the vinyl cabana was stifling, and beads of sweat were visible on her forehead, dislodging her expensive foundation. "It's community property, ma'am, and this," Davis said, pulling a binder labeled Vendors AD from the shelf, "is community business. Let's see. Apex Pool Solutions." He opened it. It was full of invoices, all identical to the one on her clipboard, and a series of carbon copy checks. Mark stood by the open gate, holding Leo. A few other residents, drawn by the police cars and the raised voices, had begun to gather at a distance. They were the ones who usually scattered when Melinda made her rounds, the ones who dutifully hid their trash cans and pulled their weeds. They were watching, whispering. "It's all there," Melinda said, trying to regain her composure. She clasped her hands, but they were shaking. "All approved by the board." "And who's on the board?" Chen asked, not looking up from the file cabinet. Myself, Mr. Henderson, and Mrs. Gable. MHM, and who signs the checks? Davis asked. I do. As president, I have signatory authority. Convenient, Chen muttered. She pulled a different file. Who's Verdant Ventures Landscaping? Our landscapers, Melinda said. They're very exclusive. And Croft Clubhouse Interiors? Chen said, pulling a third. The name hung in the hot, dead air. Melinda's face went white. She didn't say anything. Croft, Davis repeated, looking up from the Apex binder. As in, Melinda Croft. That's a different Croft, she stammered. My husband's cousin, it's a common name. Chen pulled a small, bound checkbook from the Croft Interiors file. She opened it. The address listed for Croft Clubhouse Interiors is 4221 Magnolia Drive. Isn't that your home address, Ms. Croft? Melinda lunged. It wasn't a shove. It was a wild, desperate grab for the checkbook, her crimson nails extended like claws. Give me that, it's private. Davis caught her wrist. His grip was immediate and firm. Ma'am, you need to calm down. Assaulting an officer is not going to help you. I'm not, let go of me. The whispers from the growing crowd of residents grew louder. What's going on? One man called out. Melinda, what is this? She's been robbing us. That's what's going on, shouted a woman Mark recognized from the rental office. I knew those landscaping fees were bogus. It's lies, Melinda screamed, twisting in Davis's grip. She was frantic now, her mask of superiority completely shattered, revealing something ugly and panicked beneath. It's his fault. He distracted me. He brought his vermin in here. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent, Davis said, his voice hard. I'd strongly suggest you use it. He pulled out his radio. Dispatch, I need a financial crimes detective at 1400 Oakwood Preserve. We have a potential large-scale fraud and embezzlement case. Suspect is detained. Suspect, the word hit Melinda like a physical blow. She went limp, all the fight draining out of her, replaced by a chilling, venomous stillness. She turned her head, her eyes finding Mark, who was still standing by the gate. He hadn't said a word. He was just a witness, a mirror reflecting her own actions back at her. You, she whispered, her voice trembling with a hatred that was almost pure. You, trash, you came into my community with your broken, silent boy, and you did this to me. The pure, unadulterated venom of her words made even Officer Davis recoil slightly. He pulled her more firmly toward his cruiser. Ma'am, let's go. As they walked past the baby pool, Melinda's clipboard lay abandoned on the concrete. The top page, the one she had fanned herself with, was the $80,000 invoice from Apex Pool Solutions. A small gust of wind, the first of the afternoon, stirred. It lifted the invoice, flipping it over and sending it skittering across the white concrete until it came to rest against the chain-link fence, right at Mark's feet. Mark looked down at the paper, then back at Melinda being guided into the back of a police car. The flashing lights illuminated her face, contorted in a silent snarl of fury. He felt a small hand slip into his. It was Leo. He was still holding Sheldon, but his other hand had found his father's. Mark squeezed it, his own hand shaking. The grinding, broken pump continued its rhythmic, failing complaint, a soundtrack to the complete and total implosion of a woman who had, 10 minutes earlier, been the queen of her 6-inch deep kai. By the time Detective Kincaid arrived, the scene had transformed. The Oakwood Preserve pool, normally a sanctuary of enforced quiet, was buzzing. Residents were crowded around the gate, held back by Officer Chen, all talking at once. They were angry. They were comparing notes, years of petty fines, baffling special assessments, and inexplicable fee hikes suddenly clicking into place. The $10,000 to restain the clubhouse pergola, that was her company. She fined me $500 because my mailbox was non-compliant gray. She said she'd graciously have her vendor replace it for $1,200. That brand new commercial gym equipment, it's the same stuff from Amazon Basics. Detective Kincaid, a woman whose entire demeanor suggested she had no time for any of it, walked straight past the crowd and into the cabana, which was now a sealed-off crime scene. Officer Davis was bagging the binders. Talk to me, Davis, Kincaid said, pulling on a pair of latex gloves. Short version, HOA President Melinda Croft has been running the community as her personal piggy bank for, well, it looks like years, Davis said. We found 3, maybe 4 shell companies. Apex Pool Solutions, Verdant Ventures, Croft Interiors. all registered to her P.O. box or her home address. All checks signed by her, approved by a board that I'm guessing is either complicit or criminally negligent. What's the scale? Kincaid asked, flipping through a ledger. The pool invoices alone for this year are over 100 grand. For this, he gestured at the grinding pump. Landscaping, add another 80, clubhouse. I'm afraid to even count. We're well into 6 figures, maybe 7 over time. And what kicked this? A guy with a turtle, Davis said, nodding toward Mark, who was now sitting on a bench just outside the gate, Leo asleep in his lap. She called 911 on him for putting his kid's emotional support turtle in the baby pool, claimed he contaminated her brand-new $80,000 system. Officer Chen here, he grinned at his partner, is apparently a pool pump aficionado. She called bullshit on the price, the rest just unraveled. Kincaid looked at the ledgers, then at Melinda, who was sitting stone-faced in the back of the cruiser. Her arrogance got her. It always does. Kincaid turned to Mark. Mr. Evans, right? Mark started looking up. Yes, detective. You rent from the Miller family? Yes, just moved in last month. Kincaid consulted her notepad where she'd been taking information from the other residents. That's ironic, she said grimly. According to your neighbors, Melinda Croft has been trying to force a foreclosure on the Millers for the last 3 months. She levied almost $15,000 in emergency assessments against them for, wait for it, the pool filtration upgrade. Mark's blood ran cold. She was trying to, what, take their house? So she could, what, flip it, sell it with her other company. Kincaid shook her head. She overplayed her hand. She thought she was untouchable. Then you and your turtle showed up and you didn't bow down. A patrol car was pulling away, taking Melinda to the station for processing. As it passed the bench where Mark sat, the car slowed. Melinda, through the reinforced glass, locked eyes with him. There was no remorse, no fear, just a cold, bottomless well of hate. She saw him as the source of her humiliation, the random, low-class variable that had destroyed her perfect, profitable equation. Mark held her gaze, refusing to look away, until the car turned the corner and was gone. He let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 2 months. He looked down at Leo, who was stirring. The boy's eyes fluttered open. He looked at the chaos, the police, the shouting neighbors, the yellow tape on the cabana, and then he looked at his dad. Is the lady gone? Mark's heart stopped. He stared at his son. Leo's voice was a tiny, hoarse whisper, rusty from disuse, but it was his voice. Yeah, buddy, Mark managed to say, his own voice thick. Yeah, she's gone. Leo sat up. He still had Sheldon, the turtle, held fast in his other hand. He looked at the small, placid creature that had started an avalanche. He looked at the baby pool, now empty and silent. Then he looked back at his father. Leo's small face, which had been a mask of silent grief for so long, settled into a look of quiet, profound understanding. He whispered again, Sheldon didn't like her. Mark burst out laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a laugh of sheer, stunned, hysterical relief. It was the laugh of a man who had just seen the sun rise twice in one day. He pulled his son into a hug, burying his face in the boy's hair, not caring about the neighbors or the police. Detective Kincaid, watching from the gate, allowed herself a small, rare smile. She turned back to the cabana. All right, Davis, she said, all business again. Let's box up this entire paper kingdom. I want to know where every single penny went. 3 months later, the Oakwood Preserve Clubhouse was packed for an emergency community meeting. The air, which had once been thick with Melinda's oppressive, sterile authority, was now filled with the angry, energized hum of a liberated populace. The meeting was standing room only. Mark Evans and Leo sat in the front row. They had been personally invited by the new interim HOA board, which was composed mostly of the irate neighbors who had gathered at the pool that day. The Millers, the owners of the house Mark was renting, sat beside them. They had flown in from Ohio, their faces a mixture of gratitude and shock. At the podium, a forensic accountant hired by the state was summarizing his findings. The numbers were staggering. In total, we have confirmed that Melinda Croft, with the passive complicity of her husband, who was the sole proprietor of Verdant Ventures, embezzled approximately $1.2 million from the Oakwood Preserve HOA over 6 years. A collective sickened gasp filled the room. She did this, the accountant continued, by inflating invoices, billing for services never rendered, and paying her own shell companies with community reserve funds. The $80,000 pool pump was, as the initial officers suspected, a $5,000 unit. The other $75,000 was a direct transfer to an account in her name. The landscaping, the interior design, the re-roofing, all of it a fabrication. The community was in effect bankrupt, but Melinda's assets, her immaculate house, her 2 luxury cars, her offshore accounts, had all been frozen. The state was beginning the long process of restitution. Melinda herself was facing a raft of state and federal charges. She had taken a plea deal, 10 years in state prison, in exchange for her husband's testimony against her. When the accountant finished, one of the new board members, the woman who had shouted, "She's been robbing us," at the pool, took the podium. We have a lot of rebuilding to do," she said, her voice shaking. "But the first act of this new board is to right a specific wrong. We have voted unanimously to rescind all fines, fees, and assessments levied by Melinda Croft against the Miller family." The Millers burst into tears. Mark put his arm around Mr. Miller, patting his shoulder. And the woman continued, her eyes finding Mark and Leo. "We want to issue a formal public apology to Mr. Mark Evans and his son, Leo. They were treated with cruelty and hostility, all for a turtle. But in a strange way, they saved us. They were the rock that broke the dam." The room erupted in applause. It was thunderous. Mark, embarrassed, just nodded while Leo watched, his eyes bright. After the meeting, residents swarmed Mark, shaking his hand, patting Leo on the shoulder. It was overwhelming. As the crowd thinned, Mark and Leo slipped out, walking home in the cool, crisp November twilight. They passed the pool. It was chained, the water a murky green, a large, closed indefinitely sign hanging on the gate. The faulty pump was finally, blessedly silent. "Looks yucky," Leo observed. He was talking more every day. The silence, once a fortress, was now just a room he sometimes visited but no longer lived in. "Yeah, buddy, it does," Mark said. They walked onto their lawn. Leo knelt and placed Sheldon on the grass. The turtle, who had spent 3 months in a much larger, custom-built terrarium Mark had bought, stretched his neck and began to methodically chew on a clover. "He likes the grass more," Leo said decisively. "I think you're right," Mark said. He knelt beside his son, watching the small, scarred creature that had inadvertently toppled a tyrant. He felt a sense of peace settle over him, a peace he thought he'd lost forever. It wasn't perfect. His wife was still gone, but his son was back. "Dad." "Yeah, Leo. Can we get pizza?" Mark smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Yeah, buddy," he said, scooping his son up into a hug. "We can get pizza."